Right. So, what I think I know about my family history, I know that our family dates back to the Basque country. My great grandparents were from Mexico and they got there from Spain. And then my grandma grew up in Mexico City, and my grandpa grew up in Anaheim. And my grandparents met in Mexico City because my grandma was going to teach my grandpa how to play the guitar, and my grandpa was going to teach my grandma English. And their little joke is that she doesn't know how to speak English and he doesn't know how to play the guitar. So they are third cousins, I believe, and they moved to Calexico, California after he served in World War II and after he got a job working for the Border Patrol. So that's all that I think I know about my family history, and let's see how I'm proven wrong.
Well, we'll start with my immediate family, that is my mother and father. I mean, that's what I have more of a memory right now. Uh, my father was born in Encarnacion de Diaz, Jalisco. He was born on June 2nd, 1882, four sisters. And he had no brothers. And I think I never talked to him personally about his family because I didn't get to see him that much of the time. I was quite young. But never have found out why he left Mexico. The revolutions that were coming on, not exactly in 5, but in 1910. So all this prelude coming up, I don't know whether he sensed that was the place to stay. My grandfather came to the United States. He's buried over there, I think, in Los Angeles somewhere. But once my dad disowned him, he never came into the family. You know, he had my dad and 4 girls. I mean, that's a big family, but he apparently never looked them up afterwards, as far as I know. My dad dropped his father's name and took his mother's name. My grandmother was Villalobos Alba before she was married. So that's as far as I know. I guess if I'd have got into it earlier in life and started investigating, I probably could have got my name back. I'm very sad. Even though when I registered all my children, I put in Mayagoitia. It's a middle name that all of them could have. Every one of my 9 children have the Mayagoitia in their birth certificates. So I just kind of like to keep the name going because it's unique. It was founded many years back. There's records of our family coming through Veracruz. I guess that's where the main entry was, coming in from Veracruz, across to Mexico City. But they came through early in life. There's records of them coming through in the middle of the 18th century. So my family settled, my dad's family, my family settled in that little town of Encarnacion, Jalisco. My mother's family, I guess we can go back about 1850 or 1860 somewhere, when my mother was born in Jerez, Zacatecas, on November 6th, 1892. Yeah, my dad was 10 years older than my mother when they got married. My mother got married when she was 18, and my dad was 28. Just 10 years. My mother had 2 brothers. We had 1 sister, Maria. I think they came through Chihuahua. Sometime before 1910. I don't know the exact date. On my father's side, I can tell how he was there because I have a picture of him in a wedding party there in Clifton, and it's dated down below 1905. So you know that he came in well before 1905. My mother must have come in sometime after 1905 to Clifton because they didn't know each other, but they were neighbors. So they got to know each other, being neighbors and speaking Spanish and all that. I guess they communicated quite closely, and I, on the basis of their closeness together there in Clifton, they were married in a little town called Isleta, Texas, at the old mission. They were married in 1910. I went back to Clifton and raised the family. There's where many of my brothers and sisters were born there in Clifton, Arizona. So my mother was always a housewife. She had 11 children in total. I was number 8 of 11, and I'm the last one living. I was born in Anaheim, California, like I said, in June 30th, 1923. I went through the grammar schools. I went through high school. I graduated from high school in 1941. All those years I was growing up there, of course, so many odd jobs that I took. You can't imagine. Starting 8, 9, 10 years old, I had a paper route. I literally found anything I could do to make a buck, helping during the Depression. Well, we got through the Depression. I got through high school, and the war had not started yet. I graduated in June of '41, and the war started, as you know, at Pearl Harbor, December 7th of '41. So after I had graduated 6 months, the war had started. Well, I wasn't ready to go in the service yet. I really wasn't, even though I had already been in the National Guards for 2 years and had a lot of military service. I didn't elect to go in right away. In fact, I decided to help the family out by working. I got a job over there in Long Beach with Douglas Aircraft Company. I was a riveter. Of all things, I was riveting bulkheads for the B-17 bomber. I worked at that Douglas place for a while, and I decided to go into the service. I joined the Air Force. I went through different examinations to see where I would be placed. I went to boot camp my first days in the service. I got on a train with a troop train, and we went all the way over to Florida, where I did my basic training there in St. Petersburg, Florida. I went through 32 complete missions. I was there on D-Day, June 6, 1944, which is the beginning of the end of the war, because on June that we got there and our forces landed on Normandy, by May 8th of 1945, the war was over in Europe. Percentage-wise, we lost more men than these other places, because when we weren't that big an outfit. We'd say we were 50,000 airmen over there, but we did lose 10,000 people in planes. A lot of them were prisoners of war. So the prisoners of war which were able to come back after the war, and we lost a lot of people. But every time one of those planes went down, there was 10 people in it. I saw a lot of this happening. Our group lost several airplanes and crews, and it was bad. It was my family's prayers and the Holy Spirit that was guiding me, and so I was able to get back home safely after 32 missions. I was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for my services, 6 air medals, several other citations, and it was just a year and a half, 2 years ago that the French government was able to see my record, and the French government awarded me their highest decoration, which is the French Legion of Honor. So it's a highlight of all my services in Europe. When I got back from the service, I had 4 years free schooling. It was in 1947. I went to a junior college there in Fullerton, California, which now is a state university. But I went there for about a year and a half. One of the instructors there told me, Rudy, they've got a new school in Mexico City that takes veterans. So I made arrangements to go to Mexico City. But during that time I was there, I wanted to look up my family, my Agoitia family. I knew they were in Mexico City because I had met many of my relatives in this little town of in Jalisco. I got to meet my relatives, and I saw this very rather charming girl sitting with other family members on the staircase. She says, "Well, it's muy bonita." So that's where I first saw her. So after that encounter, I introduced myself. I didn't realize at the time that her great-grandfather and my great-grandfather were brothers. Well, by that time, I thought she would be make me a nice partner. So we got through all the formalities, and we got married in 1951. And while I was getting her immigration documents at the embassy there in Mexico City, one of the school people there says, "Rudy, there's a program in Mexico that they're going to hire. They call the Bracero program. They're going to hire labor for the United States, even though during the war, in 1940 something, they invited many Mexicans to come in because the United States really needed a lot of hands a lot of farmers and things to help on the railroads and in the farms and everything because most of the men were in the service. Well, anyway, they started this Bracero program. It was brand new. So while I was there waiting to be called, I said to my wife, "Wait here, I'm going upstairs and see what's up there." I looked in there and I opened the door slightly. Everything was on the ground. No desks, no people in there or nothing except one very handsome guy, must have been 60 some years old, white haired, tall, looked like a British Prime Minister. And in fact, he says, "We've got a couple of positions over in Guadalajara and one in Irapuato." It's a little town between Guadalajara and Mexico City. He says, "Do you have any preference?" Well, great. I had two brother-in-laws living in Guadalajara and one sister-in-law and a whole bunch of friends that I had met through the Mayagueta family. So that was a shoe-in. By that time, I had two boys born, Bobby and Ro, my oldest. And so there we go. Went over to, Monterrey, Mexico. We started working there. And we had my daughter Roxanne was born there. Rolly was born there. And Lola, Huicho, were all born in Monterrey, Mexico. Well, I was there 9 years. Well, the program, and then I got an offer to be assistant manager, but I'd have to go to a little place called Chihuahua. So I says, "Well, I'll take it. Absolutely. I've been to Chihuahua before." We set up our office there, 1964. Marianne was born. Marianne was born there in Chihuahua, and so I stayed. We stayed there for 3 years. When the program was over, I had a very good friend in the government in Washington, and through him I was able to get a very good position with the Immigration and Naturalization Service, which is very hard to get into. But well, I guess with my background in service and everything was sufficient for them to overcome whatever I had to do. So yeah, I got a job with the Immigration Service, stayed in Laredo, Texas, where I was for 9 years. I stayed there all those years. Then I found out there was an officer, an elevation for me, a promotion, if I would come over to a place called Calexico, California. But I said, no, that's a good start. I get a GS-11 rating, and I'll work myself up to. I get a little better job, maybe get over to Hawaii or going up north. All these places were open. I could have done probably, but I stayed here. I stayed here another 9-10 years, and I retired I retired in the Immigration Service in June 30th, 1983, on my 60th birthday. After I retired, my sons got me by my arm and said, "Dad, you're not just going to sit home. You still got a lot of life left on you." So I went over to Mexicali, Mexican side. I got a permit to work in Mexico. I stayed there 5 years doing immigration work. You know, all the paperwork that I used to do at the immigration office, I was doing by myself. And of course, I did very well economically. Well, after 5 years of that, I said, "That's enough." So that was my history. That was my history.
I just finished going back and watching all the videotapes that I took of my grandpa and his life, and I feel kind of sad. When I was recording him, he broke down a little bit about not knowing his father, and I learned so much that I didn't know. I didn't know that he did a lot of work in immigration. I thought that his service to the government stopped after he retired when he was 60 years old. I didn't realize that he continued to do more work after that, helping people get immigrated to the United States. I didn't realize that he was a part of the Bracero program. I didn't know that he didn't know his father. So I'm really thankful for this project, and even though I only did my grandfather's side, I am excited to learn more this Christmas break about my grandmother's side and my dad's side of the family, and this is just a great conversation starter for all of the information about my family that I'm excited to learn about.